Good evening, everyone. My name is Sheree Jones. I'm a first-year medical student at the Medical College of Wisconsin, where I have the honor of serving as a co-president for our Student National Medical Association. In addition, I've been selected as one of this year's National Future Leadership Fellow Project recipients, where I serve on the Academic Affairs Committee and I chair the webinar subcommittee. This evening, we are continuing our Sowing Seeds initiative that was created by our national president, Asase Obo, in collaboration with the Alumni and Multicultural Affairs committees. Throughout this year-long program, we will provide several resources on how to succeed as a pre-med if you are interested into getting into medicine as a career, or if you are a current medical student and you are curious about various fields of medical specialties. We will touch on everything from how to study and prepare for your board exams, financial literacy, and applying to various residency programs. So make sure you are a national member by going to snma.org, where you can sign up and register so you can stay in the know. Now, to get to our dynamic panel. First, we have joining us Dr. Toma Omofoye.
Hi, everybody.
Dr. Belinda Asari.
Hey, everyone.
Dr. Janice Newsom.
Hi, everybody.
Dr. Nelson Nuoma.
Good evening, everyone.
And Dr. Bernie Vincent.
Hi, everyone.
Thank you all for joining us. I am incredibly excited to moderate and host this panel tonight, as radiology is one of my actual interests. So just to get started, can you all please give us a little bit about your personal story, include where you trained, and as far as medical school, where you are now in your career? How did you go about choosing radiology as a specialty? And did you have mentors that helped you guide that decision? And end off with your favorite thing about the field of radiology. So let's start with Dr. Toma.
Hi, so my name is Toma Omofoye, as she stated. I am currently at MD Anderson Cancer Center as an assistant professor in the breast imaging department. Prior to this, I'm going to go back a little further than you asked, but I was born in Nigeria and raised. I moved to the US just in time for college at University of West Georgia and then medical school at Duke University. I also did my residency at Duke, but the story of how I chose radiology was really roundabout. I was the person in medical school who loved every single rotation. I loved surgery. I thought I could do, OB. I thought I could do oncology. And so when it got to fourth year, I wasn't sure what I was going to apply in, honestly. And I'd already applied in internal medicine, just, thinking that it would give me that general knowledge. And then I went on to do my radiology elective in October of fourth year. So very, very late. I already had interviews lined up for internal medicine. And 1 week on the radiology elective was enough to convince me that this is what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And so I switched at the very last second. I stayed up all night trying to get my application in at the end of October before ERS closed. So I love radiology, and I'm excited to chat with you all tonight and sell it for you.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Next, we will hear from Dr. Belinda Asari.
Hello again, everyone. So I'm born and raised in Toronto. So kind of like Dr. Toma, I'm not yet American. Or actually, you might be American, but I'm not. So born and raised in Toronto. I did nursing first and then went to med school at the Beaumont School of Medicine here in Michigan. And at first in med school, I loved learning everything. So I initially thought I would do internal medicine because I thought that would be the most broad and the most general. But then I had a lecture from a radiologist who I thought was phenomenal. So I met up with her, talked with her, and shadowed her to figure out why she loved her specialty so much, because that's what she gave off when she lectured us. And she became my mentor for a year and a half up until, well, now really. So after meeting with her and then doing rotations in radiology, I was definitely convinced that it was the best specialty for me. I love that it is so broad and encompasses all of medicine, and you get to people get to consult you from all different specialties. So I love that it gives me all of medicine that I went to med school for, but in a very specific and I think beautiful way. Are there any other questions that I missed?
Did you have any mentors along the way that helped you decide?
Yes. So the lecturer, when I was in my repro course, she became my mentor, research and then general career mentor.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Dr. Bernie Vincent, can we hear your personal journey?
Sure. Bernie Vincent. I'm a PGY4 radiology resident at the University of Rochester. I also came to radiology fairly late in the game, like Dr. O. I went through medical school thinking I wanted to do neurosurgery. And the main reasoning behind that was, I think it was like middle of first year, I got really interested in neuroanatomy, neuroscience. And I thought the only outlets for that interest was either neurology or neurosurgery. And I wasn't really interested in traditional clinical medicine. So I just decided neurosurgery was going to be it. And, I went through the entirety of med school. I did sub-Is in neurosurgery. And it wasn't until those sub-Is that I, truly started questioning whether I wanted to do neurosurgery. And it was around this time that I had a Neuroradiology Rotation. This was, towards the start or middle of fourth year in about September. And, I found it really interesting. And I'm like, oh, this is a new outlet for my interest in neuro. So I kind of put it on my radar. And then the thing that cemented it for me was a Neuro-Oncology Rotation, where I spent about a week one-on-one with a neuroradiologist at the cancer hospital. And he actually sat me down at a computer, made me watch some, radiological anatomy videos. And then the next few days, he had me actually, scroll through studies myself and try to put me in the role of a radiologist. And it really cemented for me, the specialty. And I decided at that point that I wanted to pursue it. So that was my route into the field. And it's somewhat ironic because right now I'm, planning to apply to body fellowships, which is kind of far away from my initial interest in neuro. Were there any other questions that I forgot?
I think you pretty much covered it. For our audience that is tuning in, if you would feel free to send your questions for the panelists into the chat, we'll be more than happy to direct those once we get finished with the introductions. If we could have Dr. Numa.
Hey everyone. Again, my name is Dr. Nelson Mume. I was born in Nigeria. We moved to the US when I was 7, moved to Chicago. Went to undergrad at WashU in St. Louis, went to med school at UIC at the Rockford campus. And initially, I really liked surgery. I played football, I was into athletics. I had my fair share of surgeries. I loved ortho. So come third year of med school, I realized after kind of sitting in a lot of ortho surgeries, this wasn't quite for me. And then my next interest was emergency. Still loved it, but I realized kind of long-term, I don't think I would be able to tolerate that kind of acute and fast-paced kind of nature. So during my internal medicine rotation of third year, I had an attending he'd have me go and check in with the radiologists for a lot of patients. And I realized these guys and these ladies and gentlemen who were in the radiology suite were very, very brilliant, and they knew what they were talking about. They had a very systemic approach, and the technology was cool. And around the same time, I had family that were diagnosed with cancer. So I started to kind of look into the very preventative nature of certain radiological fields. And that's kind of what, set it off. And then I did a rotation at UW Seattle that sealed the deal for me. So along the way, I didn't have any mentors per se in radiology. But once I kind of chose a school, I didn't mention I'm going to residency. So I'm currently in Milwaukee, actually. So Sheree, we got to meet up sometime. I'm at St. Joe's for my TY year, but I'll be going to Vanderbilt next year. So that's where my mentor is right now, Dr. Bradshaw. I met him on the interview trail, and he's amazing. So looking forward to work with him for the next 4+ years. So that's kind of my story.
Awesome. I'm so excited. I'm always looking for a mentor. So definitely we will connect offline. Thank you for sharing. Last but certainly not least, Dr. Janice Newsom, if you would share your journey.
Hi, everybody. So I'm going to try and make my journey a lot shorter, but I'm the division chief for interventional radiology at Emory University Hospital, and also covering Grady Hospital. I'm an interventional radiologist, and I know most people would be saying, I'm not even sure what that is, but we can get to that in the questioning. But I started my journey in medicine wanting to do surgery, and actually did surgery for many years, and went into radiology kind of like almost in a backwards way. When someone was saying, oh, well, you're a girl, surgery is a little bit harder for you. Don't you think you want to do radiology? And it turns out, though, that, all the radiologists were like mad cool, so back in surgery days at Medical College of Virginia, we would go to radiology whenever someone was like bleeding out. It's like, oh my gosh, can they stop it? And they were like always able to do that. So I had my interest there. Then my mentor, Dr. Arnold Salzberg, who was a surgeon at the time, diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, had died. And basically he asked the head of radiology at the time, Dr. Anthony Proto, if he would take Dr. Janice, at the time, Hines, into radiology. So my interest into radiology was the marrying of my love for procedures and then this crazy, beautiful kind of magical medicine of interventional radiology. Along the way, I had many mentors. I continue to have mentors. And I would say I've had most of my mentors not even really be in radiology, just people that are like for you, that are just there for you all the time. And now I have mentors and sponsors, and being in the position that I'm in, I'm able to mentor and sponsor others. So this journey into interventional radiology has been amazing. And yes, most of it is, either you are drawn to this thing or this thing draws you to it. And I'd say my journey has been a mixture and a beautiful mixture of both. So I want to stop here because I've been doing this for a very, very long time. We don't want to go through all these years, but definitely want to be available for any questions.
Awesome. Thank you. I am so excited about tonight. Okay, so I know we have a couple of residents on the panel, and this application year is incredibly unique for obvious reasons, COVID, but in particular, the students that are applying to ERAS now and the match did not have the opportunity to do away rotations. So what advice would you have for our current M4s that are out there who are looking for ways to stand out from other applicants, really show an interest in a particular program that they think they might want to rank really highly, and how to really get a genuine feel for that program, being that the interviews will be in a virtual space? Dr. Asari, would you mind starting with that answer?
Yeah, sure. So I don't think in terms of how you're going about studying and doing well in school as best as you can and being involved as you desire should be different. You should be involved in things that you actually care about, and don't do things just to build your CV, because people are going to ask you about those things and you should be able to talk about them passionately. So I think if you're on that track, then keep doing that. In terms of getting to know programs, something that I did prior to applying was reach out to other minorities or women in several different programs I was interested in. Dr. Newsom can tell you about that, but I just wanted to get more information about the specific programs that I was going to apply to, and then have potential mentors. And like Dr. Newsom says, your mentors don't have to be within radiology, but it certainly is helpful, especially if they're at a level above you, just to give you more insight and be able to kind of set expectations for you before you go into applications. And there are several people that I still keep in contact with from that spring before applying. So I think if you're interested in specific programs, it's not going to hurt to reach out to those people. And some people did have their emails online already, but if they didn't, then I just contacted the program manager, and then they forwarded me to those residents, and that helped.
Thank you. Dr. Vincent, would you mind chiming in?
Sure. Speaking specifically to the away rotations, you certainly can't do them right now. And even under normal circumstances, for diagnostic radiology specifically, I don't think they're particularly necessary or helpful, just because diagnostic radiology, it's somewhat unique in that you're not really, as a medical student, going to participate in any meaningful way. It's not like medicine, where you can see patients, do notes, that sort of thing. With diagnostic radiology, you're mostly, unfortunately, going to be shadowing, because there's no, real way to include you in the patient care. So I don't think they're particularly helpful. It's kind of difficult to stand out on those rotations as well, unless you're, perhaps making connections and trying to do research in that particular department, which, developing that within a month while you're there can be difficult. So yeah, I think the away rotations aren't terribly helpful usually. As far as distinguishing yourself otherwise or making connections, I agree with what Belinda said. I think the best way to get a flavor for different programs is just to reach out to people that are in that program, and specifically the residents, I think would be helpful in that regard. I know if anyone reached out to me, I'd be happy to provide them, factual information, and I think any resident in my program would be happy to do the same, and they wouldn't really, count against you or anything. It would actually be good because you're showing interest in the program. So yeah.
Thank you. Dr. Amorfier, giving us a program perspective, can you shed some light on what programs we'll be looking for from students who are applying this cycle?
Well, I was just going to say that keep in mind that the programs also really enjoyed having you for away rotations and in-person interviews. So even from the academic perspective, programs are also adjusting to this new system, and that creates a lot of opportunity. And so what I would say is that if you go online right now, you'll find that a lot of radiology residencies are creating virtual away rotations. So this is something that you can Google, you can contact the program and find out. Some of them are creating sort of an online package to give you a day in the life of a resident at our school, or this is what this rotation looks like in radiology at our school. So there's a lot actually being created just for the applicants this year, because we understand the situation with COVID. We want to be known, the programs want to be known as much as you want to know them. Which takes me to the second point, which is, especially this year, I would really encourage applicants to get on Twitter, especially. A lot of social media, sure, but particularly on Twitter, there's the Rad Twitter subset, and I'm fairly new to it, but there's a lot of accumulation of data and information. It's being collated. They have tweet chats giving you updates from program directors. You can participate, you can ask questions. So you can actually create your own persona online and be known to the program directors the same way that you can get to know them. So I think this is a great cycle to take advantage of that.
Awesome. Would anyone else like to chime in?
So I would say that you should never, never miss an opportunity to take advantage of a good pandemic. And it turns out that I 100% agree with some of the things that have been said, right? So this is actually your opportunity to be more proactive, reach out to programs, find the people that are in your tribe. Even if the program that you're reaching out to, you can reach out to other people that are a part of NMA or SNMA that have gone to that program before, and they would give you like a real sense of what is it like for you to be there. And I totally agree. A lot of the programs already have made the adjustment for, virtual rotations. And for interventional radiology, for instance, I know that we are making preparations for people to be able to come to the hospital as long as we're able to get over this part of the surge. But you have a distinct opportunity now that it is all just going to be virtual. The cost of flying to all these places, that is like almost gone away, but you can make yourself already set apart by taking the initiative, definitely reaching out to people, using social media, finding other students that have already done this process, because they will be giving you a ton of pearls that you'll never be able to find on a website. You might not be able to figure out on an interview. So, I'd say do a little bit of research and it will get you a lot of places.
Awesome. Thank you. I want to first remind our audience that be sure to send in your questions for the panel. They are open. We just got a question in, actually. What do you feel are the biggest misconceptions regarding the field of radiology? Open to whoever wants to jump in.
So I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that, you're just sitting in a dark room all day and there's no social interaction and it's, somewhat of a dreary place. I can speak to my reading room specifically. It's a very vibrant place. Yes, it tends to be a bit darker as far as the lighting goes, but it's a very collaborative environment. When we're going through studies, if we see something interesting, there's people surrounding us, going through the case with us. If you're looking at a body case and there's, something that pops up in the bone that one of the body attendings isn't terribly familiar with, we'll walk over to the MSK section and pull one of them over. So it's a very vibrant and collaborative environment. And then in addition to that, we interface with practitioners in other specialties fairly consistently. We get phone calls, all day asking us for our interpretation of different studies. So we're constantly on the phone talking to different doctors. And then there's tumor boards where we participate, in a multi-specialty fashion to arrive at answers for patients. There's also occasional procedures. Again, I'm talking from the diagnostic perspective. With interventional, it's mostly procedures, but even on diagnostic, the day will be broken up by procedures sometimes. So it's not just sitting in a dark room all day. There's more to it. It's a bit more social than people might think.
I'll also chime in on that. I agree absolutely with everything that you've said. I also think that one of the misconceptions is that you don't get to participate in patient care, that you're really far removed from the patient, and that's just not true anymore. It also depends on the specialty of radiology. So as a breast radiologist, I essentially have a clinic. I see patients who are coming in for their diagnostic exams or their biopsy or prior to their surgery. So you see patients, and with breast cancer, thankfully, the majority of our patients do really, really well, which means that I get to see them in subsequent years when they're just coming in for checkups and they're healthy, and we reminisce and we celebrate and we share their stories, and they bring their kids and their grandkids. And so you get to have the same or a lot of really similar continuity of care as you do in a lot of primary care. So I think that belief that you're separated from patients, it's just not true anymore of radiology. We're very much partnering with our patients and participating one-on-one in their care.
Yeah, and even if that is in diagnostic radiology, you know that there are several diagnostic radiology practices that are embedded into their clinic. So yes, as an interventionalist, okay, fine, there's no degrees of separation. We see patients, we have clinic, we do procedures. But even in diagnostic radiology, at Emory, let's say the head and neck radiologists are embedded into the head and neck cancer clinics. And so patients, they actually review their imaging when they come to see the doctors with the radiologist. And I think that that model is happening more and more. So that conception that the radiologists are just all in a dark room and they don't want to interact with anybody. I'm like, to anyone who says that, you've not really been to many reading rooms lately. And the other misconception, I think, is that, oh, well, I couldn't possibly do that. Because there's a certain amount of mystery that I believe, especially for minorities who don't exactly see a lot of themselves in radiology, in this field. And I'd say that, yes, it is beautiful medicine. It's one of the best parts of medicine. It is extremely, extremely rewarding. And yes, whether you're interacting with a patient face-to-face or the image of a patient, I think this idea that if you think of every chest X-ray, every CAT scan, that you are actually making a tremendous difference in what's happening to the patient, then it takes away that sense of maybe I'm not really interacting with the patient, just the image. But I think that these images actually represent a human being, a patient, and what you say is going to really matter.
Yeah, also,
Just to add
go ahead.
Sorry. Just to add to the point of doing procedures within radiology, it's very easy to think it's limited to breast or IR, but really all specialties get to see patients, and it'll depend on how you kind of form your practice and also where you are. When I did a rotation at UVA, I noticed that a lot of the subspecialties did their own things. So MSK did the bone biopsies, body did drains and biopsies in other parts of the body, and then IR did mostly vascular. And breast did, but you would expect breast to do. Peds also did procedures. So any specialty you want to do within radiology, you can very well see patients, but you can also work it out where if you don't want to see patients, you don't have to. So you have that flexibility.
And also, yeah, to chime in, there's been a lot of great points so far. One misconception is that radiologists kind of go into that field because they don't like interacting with people. They're very shy and kind of like being on their own. They're kind of schizoid personality. And in some cases that might be true, but as you can see with this group here, we're all kind of very personable. We love to talk. We love to kind of interact with each other. And in the field, like Dr. Vincent said, you'll be talking to your co-residents, to your co-radiologists, to other doctors in the hospital all the time, to patients. So, radiology is no longer a field where you go into it because you want to just kind of be on your own alone. You have a lot of interactions.
Awesome. Great advice. Our next question from the audience says, what are some qualities that you believe make a good radiologist? And so I want to, if you could speak particularly as being a Black radiologist, as Dr. Janice lended to, we don't see a lot of ourselves in this field particular. So what do you feel makes you a good radiologist and stand out as a Black physician? Should I pick something?
I guess I'll jump in first. I thought Dr. Newsom was going to take it. But I think as with any field in medicine, the first thing is being a person of good character. So you become a good blank physician by being a good person. So I think that those personality traits of being conscientious, of being collegial and personable and dependable, You're the person who shows up to work no matter how tired you are, and you work until the work is done. There was a misconception in the past that certain fields of medicine were for people who were lazy, and that's just not true. So it's, radiology is not the specialty for that. You have to be willing to work hard and sometimes go above and beyond and stretch yourself to accommodate patients. So I think that those personality traits that make you good as a physician make you good as a radiologist as well. And I'll stop there for now.
Well, I'm going to try and give a short answer. People are texting me while I'm on this saying that was not short at all. So I'll just say, Dr. Gichoya, what makes you a good radiologist, in my opinion, is in addition to what has been said, is that you're like really curious. Someone that is really going to leave no stones unturned. And especially when you come to like some of the other super specialized areas in radiology, it's like, really, they don't know. Someone is actually relying on you to really find the diagnosis and help someone. And in the interventional radiology, a lot of things that we do, it requires patients have seen lots and lots of people beforehand, and now they're coming to you, and sometimes we're at the last resort. So that, that quench that thirst that cannot be quenched for knowledge, I think that can, will help you to be a good radiologist. And again, all the other things that will be said that makes you a good person will make you a good radiologist. And a good Black radiologist, I would say someone of color, someone that is brown or Black, I think is someone that also not only brings that character, but that person who wants to make sure that they are doing their absolute best, because let's just face it, right? We're opening doors for other people that look like us to walk through it. And it isn't fair. No one said life was going to be fair, that that every day that you show up, you're actually making a sacrifice and actually opening doors for someone else like you to come in and do that. So there's that extra, I would say, responsibility, not just to yourself, but to the people that are behind you, and also to the sacrifices that have been made for us to be where we are today.
Awesome. I'm wondering, radiology is oftentimes looked at as highly competitive. I know it's highly competitive, specifically interventional radiology, now transitioning from being a fellowship into its own program. What advice do you have for medical students that are genuinely interested in radiology, but are intimidated by what they've heard about, you need these astronomically high board scores and you need to publish 10 papers? Dr. Vincent, can you speak to that?
Sure. So speaking first to the board scores, because I think that, might be on the top of the minds of most people. The most recent data we have from, I think, the NRMP was the 2018 charting outcomes. And if you look at it, the median step 1 score was 240, which is fairly high. But if you looked at the more granular data, which breaks it down into how many people matched within a certain score range. So I think they break it down from like 201 to 210, like 220 to 230, that sort of thing. If you looked at that, it painted a more rosy picture. The percentages across the board weren't really that bad. I think even if you got like a 201 or 210 to 220, you had just about a 70% match rate, which honestly isn't terrible. I think the reason why you have a high, median step 1, which might scare some people, is just that radiology is somewhat self-selecting, and that a lot of people that go into radiology just tend to be good test takers. But I don't think that fact should, scare anyone off. And then as far as, distinguishing yourself a bit beyond the test scores, one thing I think you can do that would definitely be helpful if you develop an interest, early on enough, is to go to the national conferences. like ARRS or RSNA. These are major, national conferences where the entire radiology world essentially descends on one city, and I think it's unmatched for networking purposes. It's a great place to make connections and just get your face out there in the field of radiology. And then going back to what Dr. O said about the social media. So I'm not really, social media savvy myself, but my cousin, he's just starting as a first-year radiology resident at Thomas Jefferson. He's very social media savvy, and he leveraged that very well in his application. So I think that's another good avenue to get your name out there.
So I was someone who came very late to the game to radiology, because I was telling you all I applied in October when I already had interviews lined up for internal medicine. And I almost talked myself out of applying. So I relate to this question. I think that, first of all, you have to remember that programs are looking for a well-rounded individual. The fact that we sit in reading rooms with our colleagues all day means that we can't just pick somebody who has great test scores, right? A program wants a radiologist who's somebody they are happy to sit next to for 10, 12, 14 hours a day. And so even if you don't have that perfect test score, if you do have the ability to show, hey, my grades have been good, or I've done this kind of customer service, volunteering, or I've done even customer service, I guess, if you've worked certain jobs, or you have a personality is a very, very important thing. They're not just, I think a lot of programs are moving away from the mindset of let's just get the people with the highest test scores. I think they're looking for a whole individual. And so just figure out how to market all those other parts of your application. It is true that most people who apply in radiology did score very well on their STEP exams. They are people who are AOA. They are people who've published a couple papers in medical school or, prior to that. But I think that for the people who are not yet fourth year, so if you're in first, second, or third year, let this be the encouragement to you to say, okay, let me go ahead, if I might be interested in radiology, let me go ahead and start doing some of these things. Let me go ahead and start getting good grades in all the classes I can get good grades in, and let me, use opportunities to do research or whatever it is. They say if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. And I think that certainly God helped me, but I think a big part of why switching so late in the game I was still able to match was because even though I had nothing in terms of radiology specific information on my application, I had enough going for me from being very, very involved in SNMA. I was SNMA co-chair when I was in medical school. So there was a lot of volunteering that came with that. There was, a lot of mentorship that I had done. I had done community education. I had done all of these other things. And so even if I didn't have a grade in radiology on my transcript, it gave me a leg up to say, okay, she does a lot. If you give her a chance, this is somebody who's going to run with it. And so keep in mind that your programs are looking for a big picture of who you are. So show off some of your talents more than just your test scores. And that's true even if you have good test scores. You want to be a well-rounded individual.
Awesome. I think that's great advice for the class of 2024 coming up, because there won't be those step one scores. It'll be pass fail. So harking on making yourself well-rounded as an applicant, getting out there, networking, and meeting people in the field to show your genuine interest, and doing some volunteering, I think is really, really important. So we did have another audience question. Radiology seems to be either highly technology/research oriented, academia, or business driven, private practice. As a student who still has a desire to help Black and Brown patients and other marginalized groups, how have you or would you go about incorporating that into a radiology career? So, Dr. Asari.
I've actually thought about this a lot, and it was a part of why I chose radiology. So other than having a desire to do breast and IR, either or together, we'll see, and wanting to sort of have a practice that's driven by the needs of our patients, I really like that radiology has so much flexibility in your life so that you can basically live as a normal human and serve wherever you want to. So a part of my activities in med school was really focused on community service, and that doesn't have to end as a resident or as an attending. So my plan is to continue in that realm where I'm serving and enjoying life, serving the community. So I think radiology just adds that flexibility that I'm looking for so that I can do that. And if I can mix the two together, wonderful. If I can't, I can still serve no matter what.
Thank you. I think that's a common misconception, is that if you go into a specialized career, then you're not interacting with the marginalized communities, the Black and Brown populations. And I think that's something that we need to stress that is not true, right? Because
Absolutely.
that
Absolutely.
is so important. And I think that is one of the things that kind of deters a lot of underrepresented students from going into specialized careers, because they think that unless I'm a pediatrician, unless I'm in family medicine, unless I'm in emergency medicine, I'm not going to be able to help my people. And that could not be farther away from the truth. Dr. Nume, would you mind giving input on that last?
Absolutely. First of all, I agree with everything Dr. Asari said, 100%. Also, I think kind of having this pipeline to help bring more Black and Brown radiologists into the field will actually help the community as well. It's kind of known that, patients, they feel more comfortable with doctors of their own kind of kind and ilk. And doctors kind of are more, if you're a part of that community, you kind of look out for people a little more. You can spend a little more time on that read, or spend a little more time explaining something to that patient. And, having more people like us, and then having those people kind of give more care to the community, it really helps the community it's in the field of radiology. But also, like Dr. Asari said, we have the time to also delve, into the community outside the hospital and pitch in. So there's kind of a two-headed approach there.
Our
next question.
Jump in on that, please. I'm so sorry. I hope I'm not monopolizing this conversation.
No, not at all.
It's very, very important to talk about this, because I think this is why a lot of people shy away from subspecialties. The truth is that, so the data says that less than 10% of radiologists are underrepresented minorities. About 25% of radiologists are women. So there's a lot of room in terms of diversifying the makeup of radiologists. I think with regards to the minorities, you have to remember that when there are so few people in that field already, it actually means that there's more work there left to do. There actually is a lot of work to do in terms of health disparities and health outcomes research in radiology. And there's a lot of excellent people right now who are starting to do that research, and they're getting national funding for it, because people are aware that this is work that needs to be done, and there's just too few hands, So I think that it actually creates an opportunity to do a lot of disparities research. Why do Black women with breast cancer have worse outcomes? Why do we see that even though most men with prostate cancer do well, the percentage that don't do as well is the African-American men? So there's a lot of questions here, and there's a lot of really exciting research. So there's the ability to contribute to disparities even in your work. And I think also, even within the academic circles, when you are part of a team that's so small, when you're part of a group that's so small in your field, you're able to actually have a lot of impact one-on-one. So here's an example. Dr. Newsom, I haven't had the pleasure of meeting before, but I've heard of her for years, right? So the reputation precedes you. The mentorship and the people that she's mentored, that have mentored me, have made such a big difference. And on the other hand, too, the other thing to think about as a minority, when you're going into a field, sometimes you get intimidated and think, is there space for me here? If I don't have a mentor who looks like me, will I be accepted? But the truth is that as a field, radiologists are very open-minded people, I think, and the majority of my mentors have not looked like me. I have had excellent mentors and sponsors throughout my career. They look nothing like me, but they have been amazing allies in building me up to where I am today. So you don't have to have people who look just like you for them to be people who believe in you and want to help you achieve what you need to do.
Thank you. Our next question, why is the advantage or disadvantage of matching into IR versus doing an IR fellowship? I think they meant what is the advantage or disadvantage into matching. So if you could speak, Dr. Newsome, about the various pathways to getting into IR to focus on this question.
Yeah, so there's a lot to unpack here. And I see that in the chat, someone actually put a great article that may be able to help to guide people towards that so that they can see what are some of the advantages versus the disadvantages. But let's just say straight out, the Interventional Radiology Fellowship has died. It died last year. So there's no more IR fellowships. There's only IR residency. So what is the advantage, you'd say, of matching directly into interventional radiology from medical school, which is the residency part of it? And it is the entire thing that interventional radiology is moving away from a specialty that is purely procedural based, that we see ourselves as this triple threat in medicine, that we can do procedures, we're experts in imaging, and we also take care of patients, so that we are the combination of good internal medicine doctors, great surgeons, and good diagnostic radiologists. And in order for us to be able to accomplish that, interventional radiology is its own specialty. So for the persons that are out there that says, yeah, it's a little bit difficult now, it's like the new thing on the block, it is very hard to get into, do not be dissuaded. It means that you just have to try a little bit harder. So if you have not been exposed to interventional radiology before in your medical training, and then therefore you couldn't match directly into it, then there's a pathway called ESIR, Early Specialization in IR, which allows you to actually do diagnostic radiology, have done many different of the IR rotations, procedural rotations, ICU, ER, whatever it is that the curriculum at your place would say. And now the Society of Interventional Radiology is putting forward a standardized curriculum for this to happen. But if you were that kind of person that didn't have enough exposure to IR, then there is still another way for you to be able to become an interventional radiologist. That's a long, long answer to saying that IR fellowships have gone away. The advantages of matching directly into IR versus ESIR, I'd say that, it probably is more individually based. Yes, there's like a 1 year difference, but I don't want to emphasize that. And I tell people, what is time? What are you doing with that time anyway? Time is nothing if you're investing that time in yourself. And for crying out loud, you are worth it, right? So whatever time it really takes for you to live out your dreams so that you can change other people's lives, I'd say that is time well spent. 12 months goes by real fast.
You are worth it. I love it. Does anyone else want to address this question?
I'd like to say, as someone who is considering applying to IR, I thought it was wiser for me to just do the DR pathway and then decide later on because of that pathway through ESIR. So it's not as if you don't match into IR right away, you're screwed and you can never get into it. I just wanted more time to decide because radiology has so many good specialties. It's hard to just say, I want to do IR only. And another nice advantage of doing ESIR is that if you like to do your IR training somewhere else, then you have that flexibility. So you either do all of 6 years at one program, or you can do your prelim years somewhere else, 4 years of radiology at your advanced program, and then a year, I think the independent program is a year or two to do IR elsewhere, but it just gives you more time to decide if you go the DR pathway. And I agree with Dr. Newsome, time is time. You'll train either way.
Thank you. Good to have those two perspectives. Our next question, as a radiologist in breast imaging, what sparked your interest in that subspecialty? And what is the day-to-day like? So that's a huge question.
Thank you for the question. I'm going to try not to ramble because I love breast imaging so much. I genuinely wake up every day excited to go to work. So I actually, like I was saying, I initially was thinking maybe I would do internal medicine or medical oncology. So I like cancer biology in general. And a lot of what we're doing in breast imaging is figuring out, is this breast cancer or not? So it is work that is important, right? So you're doing every day, the work that you do has value, and there's something really comforting about that. But it's also really sensitive work. So it takes all of you as a person. It takes your brain, it takes your procedural skills, it also takes your compassion and empathy, you know, and being able to use all of myself at work is really fulfilling. It's a time, I mean, people can tell you the day, the second, what they were wearing when they were told they had breast cancer. So it's such a sensitive thing. It bonds you and that patient, I mean, forever, you know? So being able to do something for women at a time where they really need their hands held, they need intelligent, compassionate conversations and care, that's something that I really feel honored that I get to do every day. Day to day, the workflow varies quite a bit. So there's patients who just get their pictures taken and they go home. They're just screening goes. There's patients who are getting diagnostic workup. So they're coming in because they have a particular complaint or because their screening exam was abnormal. And so those patients, I go and talk to them about their results. So I look at their image, I go in and discuss it with them. For every patient, I can give them a plan, which is another thing I love about breast imaging, because with BioRads, every patient has a plan. Even if I don't know just yet what you have, I have a plan to get you there. And I love being able to say that to someone. I have a plan to figure out what's going on. So we can do that. And then we also will do procedures as well. So every place does it differently. You may have a day where you just do procedures, or you may have all of these different roles of screening, diagnostics, and procedures scattered throughout your same day. But every day is different. And we do get to see a lot of women, that's true, but we also see young kids. I see high schoolers all the time. Sometimes we'll have very young children come in as well. If there's an issue there, we have men who will come in if they have an issue. So you get to see a wide variety of folks as well. And really the people who go into breast imaging are also people that I enjoy being around all the time. So it's a great field. Highly recommend.
As a PGY1, can we get the day-to-day from Dr. Nume?
Yes, indeed. So right now, I'm literally at 1 month in to being a PGY1 at a Transitional Year program. Essentially, Transitional Year is an intern year where you're doing a lot of wards months, seeing patients in the hospital, but you're also doing some electives. My first month was in the wards, so I saw a lot of patients, including COVID patients. It was tough, but it was actually very fulfilling. Learned a lot of things in a short amount of time. Learned what it means to be truly a part of the team and truly kind of pull your weight to taking care of patients. I've enjoyed every bit of it. Even sometimes the longest we've had is like 18-hour calls. Our call is every 4 days, so recover in between. And it's been great overall, though. I'm pleasantly surprised with how it's been. Maybe I should kind of hold my tongue and see how the rest of it goes, but so far it's going really well.
Awesome. We are at the 2-question mark. So for our residents, we do have an audience question. If we get an opportunity to rotate with a radiologist online or in person, how do you recommend we utilize our time to best, 1, evaluate if the field is right for us, 2, learn skills to use
I think I'm having connection issues. Can you all hear me?
Yep, we can hear you. Learn skills to use on auditions and beyond, 3, network, and 4, grow as a potential radiologist in the future. I think this is a really loaded question. So I don't know if can you all remember that? If we can have maybe 2 people take the first part and 2 people take the second part?
I can try to
Okay.
answer them quickly. I think for one, evaluating if the field is right for you, it's going to be hard for you to try to be a radiologist as a med student on a rotation. And even if you do learn certain things, you won't see radiology for another 2 years because you do a prelim year first. So I think just talking to people, talking about what they love about their job, what their day-to-day looks like, you can observe that with your eyes as well. But just take advantage of talking to people, especially in a time where everything is virtual. And then for 2, learning skills, I think asking people what would be helpful for me to know going into intern year, what would be helpful for me to know as I figure out if radiology is right for me. There are certain things that are helpful as an intern if you learn them on a radiology rotation, and people are happy to teach you those things. And then network, just be normal, talk to people, I think, and growing as a potential radiologist, just learning to love the field, I think, because again, you won't see it for a couple of years until way after you apply and match.
Yeah, but there are several opportunities that exist for students right now to get scholarships from the ACR, American College of Radiology. They're at the NMA, at the Society of Interventional Radiology. There are all kinds, I'm sure, for breast imaging radiologists that they're outreach for medical students to be able to go to their national meetings. And if they're having meetings in person, you're going to be allowed to go. And if they're having meetings virtually, you're going to be able to go. And I think that, getting involved in these student interest groups really give you a different perspective than I can actually even give you on the phone today. So I cannot emphasize that enough.
Awesome. Thank you. I don't know if we had another question from the audience that was coming in. If not, excuse me, can you describe?
So we see a few questions that are in the chat, and maybe we can answer them afterwards. Like maybe they're only because there are lots of great questions there, like artificial intelligence and radiology, racism and unconscious bias in radiology. So I don't want anyone to think that we're ignoring your questions. I just see them popping up, which is, I've been going off camera to kind of look at that, but I think these are impressive questions.
Okay, so we have a couple minutes left. Do you all want to speak to artificial intelligence in radiology? That's been a big buzz that, AI is going to wipe out the human field of radiology and take over?
I'll talk about that. So at my program, we actually have, artificial intelligence program in place that we're researching. So as a resident, I've been able to interact with it, see how, it'll assist us, and see how it'll develop. So the current AI program that we have helps us to detect brain bleeds. That's one program. And then another one helps us to detect pulmonary embolisms. And looking at the way they work right now, it's just inconceivable to me that in my lifetime, they would ever replace a radiologist. And there's multiple reasons for that. So one, both systems, the one for the brain bleeds and the one for the pulmonary embolisms, have a pretty high, like they're very sensitive. They're very sensitive. So a little spot they'll detect, but they have a very high false positive rate. And the false positives to the human eye are just like blatantly obvious. It'll call calcifications in a certain place a bleed when you, as a human, look at it and it's clear that it's just calcifications. Or it'll call, motion, like the normal breathing in the chest, it'll call that the pulmonary embolism because it makes the artery a bit blurred. So it's very sensitive, but it's not very, specific. So it's not going to be helpful in diagnosing on its own. You still need the help of a human to kind of guide it. And in addition to that, even if we develop more sophisticated AI systems that could generate a report like a radiologist does, the way we interact with doctors like in the hospital, I just don't think they'd be satisfied with a computer-generated report. They'd still desire that human component of talking, through the study with us, seeing what our opinions are based on that patient's clinical scenario. So you wouldn't get that from a computer-generated report. And then the last thing, right now, just think to yourself, it's 2020. If 10 years from now, Boeing had a new plane, the Boeing 737 MAX 11, and they told you it was self-piloted, and you book your Delta flight, and they tell you, get on the plane, self-piloted, there's no pilot on the plane, no human pilot. I don't think anybody would get on that plane. And I think it's kind of similar, with AI and medicine. I don't know that anyone is at that point right now where they trust a computer with life and death, decisions.
Thank you so much. So one thing that we like to do with Sowing Seeds is at the end, we like for our panelists to leave our audience with a one-line brief words of wisdom. So Dr. Belinda Asari, can you start us off with that?
I think trust your gut. When it comes to your rank list, going into interview season, I thought I had my rank list sorted out, but by the end of it, there was no way that I could go with my intellectual list when my gut was telling me to put it the way it wanted it. And I think it turned out really well.
Dr. Amofiye.
I'd say never be intimidated to go after what you want. So dream big and go for it. And, when I wanted to go into radiology, I wanted to do global health. And I didn't think there was a way to do that. But somehow today I'm doing it. So go after what you want. Just keep pushing and you'll figure it out.
Dr. Vincent? One-liner words of wisdom.
Oh, one-liner word of wisdom. Can you circle back to me? I want to think about it.
Absolutely. Dr. Newsome.
Words of wisdom. So John Lewis is lying in state and going to be put to rest. I'm from Atlanta. So my one-liner word of wisdom, I would say, don't be afraid to get into trouble, some good trouble, what I would consider necessary trouble. So, there's so many ways to interpret that, but I would just leave it at that. That is my word of wisdom.
Thank you for that. Dr. Nume?
Yes, I will say mistakes and roadblocks will happen. You just got to work your way around it, work through them, but expect them. Don't be crippled by it. Reach out for help when you need it. Reach out to people who have gone beyond the area where you're at and just push through.
Okay, I got it. I would say never lose perspective. When things get hard, when you're going through trying times, you just had a hard test or something, never lose perspective. Always know that you're ultimately going into this for the patients, doing this for the patients. So I just never lose perspective.
Thank you so much for that. So trust your gut. Don't give up on yourself. The time is going to pass anyway. You're worth it. And don't be afraid to get into good trouble. In loving memory. Thank you all so much. We greatly appreciate your time, your presence, your patience, your wisdom that you have been able to give our audience on today. I'm sure they were excited to hear from you, hear the advice that you have to share with them. And we look forward to the next generation of radiologists. So thank you again to our amazing panelists. We appreciate your support of the SNMA and our membership. For those of you in the audience, you can please scan the QR code on the screen. This will also be located in the chat to give us some feedback as we work to create useful programming for you. The See Us campaign. Be sure to become a national member, logging on to snma.org. Thank you again for joining us. I encourage you all to follow us on Instagram at SNMA_official. On Twitter, our handle is at SNMA, and like us on Facebook. But most importantly, if you are not a national member, once again, please visit snma.org to sign up and get connected. Thanks for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you all at our upcoming Sowing Seeds webinar. Thank you all so much. Have a good night and better tomorrows.